Fantasy Source Baseball Podcast. My name is David A. Arnott, sitting here with Brad Pinkerton, and spring training is wrapping up. We've got teams already going back to their hometowns and playing crosstown rivalries and such. The Giants played against the A's. I was very happy to see Brandon Belt with the regulars, that sort of thing happening. But now that spring training is wrapping up, there's an issue that comes up every single year that we kind of have to address, which is that the consensus is that spring training stats do not matter. They just don't matter because, I think there was a line that I believe Rob Nyer wrote where we've been watching closers pitch in the fourth inning and starters throwing 10 straight changeups just to mess with it. Do you really think that those matter? What are your thoughts on how to look at spring training stats?
Well, it's too broad to say that spring stats don't matter. I would lessen that a little bit and say that spring stats aren't everything. You look at certain numbers and they will jump out at you to kind of portend what might come in the season for a player. But you can't live and die by just 1 month's worth of stats. Okay,
so who are some of the guys that you're looking at that you say, this is a performance that I think matters to a good degree?
Well, you look at Michael Morse with the Nationals. He's locked up a left field job by having a tremendous spring. He's hitting .365 as of right now with 9 home runs, and that's the second most in all spring training. And I'm not buying into those numbers too much, thinking that he's going to be a 30-homer threat, 100 RBIs and hit over 300. That's not what I'm looking at. What I'm looking at is how he finished the 2010 season. Last year he hit .289 with 15 jacks just as a part-timer. And now he's carrying it over into a solid spring, and I think that could lead into a very good 2011 season for him.
So you do take your pre-spring training projections, and you're going to bump them up for him?
Well, yeah, we'll bump up a little bit, but I'm thinking conservatively, 20-plus homers. He could get up to 80, 90 RBIs in that lineup. I mean, it's going to be pulling teeth to score runs with the Nationals, but I think he can do something with Jason Worth there right beside him in the lineup.
Who are some of the other guys you've been seeing?
Kyla Kayahue. I'm turning on to this guy. He's got tremendous power, a huge guy.
His minor league track record is impeccable.
Well, it's not impeccable. It's getting better. His average increased every stop along the way as he climbed the ladder in the minors, which that is a huge light bulb for me. When I see a kid that does that and then he's going to get a chance at the major league level, I'm very excited.
Maybe not impeccable, but that he doesn't really have anything left to prove in AAA.
He definitely doesn't. He's got already tremendous power in his plate discipline. He actually walked more than he struck out last year at AAA, and that's a very good sign for me.
Oh, I see you have listed A-Rod.
A-Rod, yeah, he's having a great spring. He's swinging the bat well, and with an established veteran like that, you typically don't care about if he's doing really well or really poorly. But at least this means he's healthy, and fantasy owners can expect his A game right from the beginning.
Well, remember last year too. If I recall, it was last year. Maybe it was just over time, past few years. He had tried to bulk up. Mm-hmm. He was trying to be more of a power hitter, de-emphasizing his speed game, and I think that it actually went against him last year. It didn't really help him this year, getting a little bit leaner, trying to be more of the player he was before, maybe a last hurrah instead of being the 28 home run guy he was last year.
And I think he was still trying to get his hip back in shape last year too.
What about some of the guys that you're seeing that have struggled this spring, and why you think that those struggles do mean something?
Yeah, and these stats do matter. You look at it like a Pedro Alvarez hitting .215, 25 strikeouts, 4 walks.
Oh.
It doesn't take long to figure out why he struggles and why owners are going to have to put up with prolonged slumps this year. So if you own Pedro Alvarez, just buckle your seatbelt.
He does have an amazing pedigree, but I didn't realize that it was that kind of strikeout to walk ratio. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
And a lot of guys are looking at Drew Stubbs to be the next Carlos Gonzalez, and while I think he does have the power-speed combo to fall into that category, he's not going to be contending for any batting titles, and he, just like Alvarez, is struggling at the plate with his plate discipline. 23 Ks, 3 walks, and he's got to improve that. I think it's going to be an adventure for fantasy owners with his average. It could be anywhere from 260 to 290. You just don't know what you're going to get there, but the power and speed should be fairly consistent with – I'm actually predicting a little less power this year for Stubbs.
One of the things that I struggle with Stubbs is that I still remember him as the guy who was going to be a first-round draft pick out of high school, went to the University of Texas, and then most scouts kind of agreed that he just kind of stagnated the entire time he was there. And so while he had a great season last year, it still feels like, there's you can't get too caught up in what the guy's potential is as much as what is he going to do this year.
Right. And fantasy owners will look at Stubbs and see 30-30. Well, I don't think that's going to be this year. His power is still very much in development. And another 30-30 potential candidate that owners are high on is Justin Upton. Well, he's only 2 for 8 in steals this year. We've seen him be able to swipe bases before, but it seems like he's going to be a little more of a power hitter than a base-stealing threat. So I would hold off on the 30-30 expectations, at least for this season.
So if I gather what you're basically saying here, you get guys, mainly guys who are kind of on the edge of starting, not starting, see how they do when they're tested against a combination of AAA, minor league players and major league players, and see how they do in spring training. That does kind of matter.
It does, and fantasy owners should look at more than just the 5x5 categories. Look at the numbers that are producing those 5x5 categories and see really if these players can keep up the streaks.
Any other guys that you're seeing that, maybe they're having a great performance and you think that does matter, or they're having a poor performance and you don't really care much about it because you think they're going to bounce back?
Well, let's look at a guy who's having a great spring but probably doesn't mean anything is Chris Davis. We've seen this from him, year in, year out. We're talking about this about every spring, but he's having a great year or a great spring, but he has nowhere to play in Texas, and he's still striking out way too much with no walks. And without improvement in that area, he's not going to be guaranteed any more playing time than he was in previous years.
And then I do see one other person on your list that I think I'm really high on, Alex Gordon. I really do believe that at a certain point you have to say, okay, maybe this year is his make or break year. Maybe it's going to be next year. But this guy, he was so good in the minors. He was so good in college. He's still young. I think he's going to have major league chances all the way into his early 30s just because the guy was so good. Well, how do you see him coming out this year? Because he did have an amazing spring. Again, he can hit minor league pitching.
I am not going to say that Alex Gordon is a bust and it's never going to break out. I'm not going to walk out on that limb. All I'm going to say is that he has hit at least 310 with an OPS of 833 and higher every spring training he's gone to. I'm just not going to fall for it this year.
Take that as you will. All right, Brad. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.